Hello, I'm Dylan.
And I'm Keon.
And this is Torchwood Doctor, that podcast with a lot of really good aerial shots of London, because this week we watched Children of Earth Day 3,
Written by Russell T Davies and James Moran.
directed by you, Rosalind.
And aired on July 8th, 2009.
All right, a little behind the scenes, a little sprinkle behind the scenes there. This is the second time we're recording this intro. For those people who are like, you just want to know what happens behind the scenes of Torchwood Doctor. This is the second time we record. We also had a lot of like more edgy and slightly too real intros related to this episode, but also to things that are like falling apart in our current providence of habitation. And we decided not to use those. I decided not to use those, I guess. I guess I could say anything during the intro and Keon would be like completely unable to do anything about it since he's a couple miles away. At least.
Yeah, and I don't edit the episodes, so. But I mean, yeah, we obviously went for the one that, referenced visuals, right, on a podcast, so.
Right, on an audio podcast. Look at us go. Man, remember that time we tried to do video episodes and we recorded like 2 and then we were like, screw this?
Yeah, I do. Now that you bring it up, I had forgotten about that. But yeah, there's like, we didn't even do anything remotely interesting with it visual-wise. It was just us in the room that we used to record in.
The room. You're really overselling where we used to record.
Yeah. Well, that's a story for another day. Other days that have already passed, I guess. Because now we're on day 3 of Children of Earth of Torchwood.
Yeah, now we record in the safety of our own homes. So we don't even record in the same room anymore.
Right.
Perhaps one day to return to the same room in a million years when this is over. But yes, day 3 for Torchwood 3. Torchwood 3.
Yeah, true. So
we basically pick up right where it left off last week. The Torchwood team goes to a warehouse and immediately it's like, oh shoot, is this that warehouse from... And then I couldn't remember what episode it was, and then I never looked up what episode it was.
Do they actually reference a specific episode? Because I just thought it was like, yeah, this is a... Or was it a Doctor Who episode?
No, it just looked like they used the same warehouse to film in as... I'm 99% sure it's the one with Martha, the Doctor, and Harold Saxon. Last of the Time Lords?
I wouldn't remember that far back. We're recording this on January 9th, and like this week, it's like, I mean, we've basically been through 1 week of 2021, and it's felt like months.
Yeah, the best thing happened today, of all days, is that a plane in Indonesia just vanished. That's cool. Then they found wreckage, or debris, a couple hours later, and they're like, I guess the plane crashed. So, just to add to the pile, there's like a pile of bad things that have happened in 2021 so far, and it grows by the minute, by the literal minute.
2022.
Great. I mean,
not
like,
the year 2022, but like the year 2022,
yeah,
like Roman numeral 2
is going to be like that. Every year this decade is going to be 2020 something, and we're going to remember the horrors that were the start of the decade.
Yeah, the Roaring 20s back with a vengeance after a 100-year hiatus.
Now I'm just waiting for the stock market to crash even worse than it already has in the past couple years.
Well, at least Torchwood lets us go back to the halcyon days of 2009. That were only good because we were kids and didn't realize that there was actual, like, shit going down that was pretty bad back then, too.
Yeah, Obama was president. That's it. That's it. Obama was president. Jeez. Ignorance truly is bliss. The one thing 2020 taught me was that ignorance is bliss. that I would be a lot happier if I didn't know any of this, but I do. So
Yeah, you didn't know that? You'd be a lot happier just knowing nothing.
yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I just had it proven to me.
But hey, at least, like, there's always more to learn, right? So you can always, just position yourself or rejoice in the fact that there's, like, to a certain degree, you remain ignorant.
Speaking of ignorance, the government in this episode takes the COVID-19 approach to the alien situation, where they're just like, go about your normal lives, don't panic too much. But we are instituting a curfew for all kids, specifically.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's not really much that they could, like, do, especially considering that they are, secretly, I guess, harboring the aliens, the 456.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it would have been useful if they hadn't, like, killed off Torchwood. Or if they looped Unit in on this whole thing.
Yeah, speaking of killing people, Reese is just, like, emotionally stabbed at the beginning of this episode when Jack lets slip that Gwen told him about her pregnancy before she told Reese. Because if you remember back to day one, they all kind of figured it out at the same time. And Reese is just like, great, I was the last to know. Awesome.
I'm going to be honest, when you started that segue, I thought you were going to go a different direction than where you ended the segue. You started the segue with speaking of killing people, and what I thought you were going to say was Reese wants to kill Jack because Jack found out first. But then you were like, Reese gets emotionally stabbed, and I was like, wait, what?
Yeah, or emotionally, like, bludgeoned or something.
Yeah.
Wounded, or... Yeah, I don't know, something like that.
So Reese is understandably upset, so I guess he just becomes obsessed with beans for the rest of this episode, which is kind of hilarious because after watching this episode, I went and had beans for lunch, and I was like, beans.
Also kind of hilarious because, like, the first... I wouldn't call it a meme, but, like, the whole bean dad thing.
Look, that was...
That was a week ago.
That was a week ago for when we were recording this, but also that was the opportunity I got to drop that this podcast is 7 years old now. Congrats. Woo! Our podcast is officially in elementary school. Woo!
Yeah, remember when we used to care?
We'll do something big for the 10th anniversary.
Yeah, if we even get there.
Great. New content every week till we die, so you know what that implies.
Yeah, as we've literally mentioned many times before, it means if we stop, we die.
So basically, this warehouse becomes a sort of base of operations, except that they realize they've got literally nothing to work with or from. They've got no tech, they've got no clothes. Jack's upset about what he's wearing. So Gwen basically is like, guess what? I was a police officer, and because I was a police officer, I had to train to know, like, what all the criminals would do. So that means I know how to make us criminals. And so she does, and they basically steal money and credit cards from a bunch of people. The way they do it at first, to me, seems like really... Like, it made me go, really? Because they just pretend to be waiters at a restaurant, picking up, like, people's bills, and then they just run off with the credit card. And I'm like, wow.
Yeah, this was like, I mean, it was a funny scene, because I thought when they first brought it up, or when Gwen first brought it up, rather, I didn't think there was going to be, like, I thought there was going to be some sort of, I don't know, twist to it, but no, it's just literally like, since we've been branded as criminals... nothing. It's almost as if they're like, we have nothing to lose, so we might as well do this, which kind of, like, implies or hints that, like, the only reason why Torchwood weren't just, like, petty thieves was because they had reputations, like, almost implying that if they knew that they could get away with it, even if none of the events of Children of Earth had ever happened, like, if they knew they would be able to get away with it, they just would have done it anyway, Like, it almost kind of has that ring to it.
Yeah, a little bit. A little bit. I kind of interpreted it as like, well, we are already criminals since we're on the run. May as well just be criminals. I don't know if it's necessarily like they would be criminals if Torchwood didn't have a reputation, but I mean that's also not counter to the characterization of all of the people who work for Torchwood that we got. So
I guess. Yeah.
my Amazon X-ray fun fact of the week appears right now because Captain Jack basically steals a car from someone who's like at the ATM. Which, like, first off, who the heck goes to the ATM and like leaves their keys in their car while they're at the ATM?
Leaves it running.
And second off, like every ATM ever has like a security camera, so this is a pretty dumb idea, especially since we see later in this episode that like the civil office that Frobisher works for apparently has a massive surveillance infrastructure in place. But anyway, the Amazon X-ray fun fact of the week is that this is actually John Barrowman's Porsche that Jack is driving here. They swapped out. They put new plates on it, so it wasn't actually his plates. But apparently, this is actually John Barrowman's Porsche.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So they steal a bunch of stuff, and they get back to their warehouse, and you see I guess Reese has written Hub 2 or Torchwood. Yeah, I forget what it was.
Hub 2. I think.
Yeah, it was Hub 2. It was like, great. You're on the run. You're hiding. Like. I guess if someone gets into the warehouse, you're screwed anyway. But like, just seems a little brazen to do that.
I mean, yeah, probably. Jack has some sort of joke like, haha, I guess this means you're part of the team now, Reese. Everyone's like, geez, Reese is part of the team. Oh no.
Damn it.
Shut it.
Well, speaking of, theft, Clement, now that he's out, has also just decided to commit petty theft. And gets caught, like, immediately.
Yeah, he's not a cop like Gwen, so he just gets caught. And, while in the hub, Gwen has the idea to look up Clement because he was the only adult that they know of who was getting the messages. So she has Ianto, because they've stolen a laptop. So Ianto, who also has bought clothes for everybody, including a new coat for Jack, identical to his old one, on his laptop to look up Clement McDonald, and he finds out that he's locked up in the police system.
Right, as this is going on, Jack gets clued into 3 other names that he doesn't recognize, but he does recognize their pictures when Ianto pulls them up.
Yeah. It's the names of the other people who got assassinated or were supposed to be assassinated off the same kill order that was set to kill Jack.
Right.
But yeah, he doesn't recognize them by name, but he does recognize their faces, so he goes, oh, shoot. And runs off to destinations as of yet unknown.
Right. Gwen, I think at this point, and Gwen and Reese go to pick up Clement. If I remember correctly, I think that's what happens here.
Yeah, because Gwen calls PC Andy. PC Andy! She calls PC Andy and he's like, can you get a prisoner out for me? Because just don't ask questions, please. I just need him. And he's like, all right, yeah, I guess I can do that.
Yeah, Gwen gets a little bossy in this episode, gets a little abrasive, is a little, curt with people, so to speak. Including PC Andy, who doesn't deserve that shit. Just who doesn't deserve it.
You might say she's displaying a little bit of wrath.
Yeah. And pride. Suggesting thievery as a means to, like, get stuff, even when you're on the, it's not a sin, technically, but we're going to pin you on something, Gwen, so.
Before her and Reese go to get Clement actually, I forgot that they're looking for a way to basically get in the room, so to speak, and she remembers that Lois might help them. And they've still got the contact lenses, which we find out Gwen still got the contact lenses because her and Reese took them home for some, quote, fun, unquote. Which just made me think of the plot point in Ready Player 2 that... God, I can't believe I'm about to say this on a Doctor Who podcast that claims to be somewhat serious. Where there's a device that basically allows you to experience the feelings of another person's memories that they've recorded using a separate device, and that has led to an entire field of porn where people record their experiences, and then you can experience their sexual fantasies / experiences for real. Which is just what I'm imagining, like Gwen and Reese were using the contact lenses to record like first person POV sex vids, I guess. This episode's getting an explicit tag, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I already dropped multiple swears. Feels weird and very childish saying word swears, but as like not a verb, but yeah, I mean, have you read Ready Player 2? Is that
No, that's just a plot point that I know exists because I've read the excerpts of that scene that people have posted on Twitter mostly. Scarred me for life. Not really, but
yeah, I was gonna say, like, all right.
Yeah, in Ready Player 2, I guess since we're getting explicit tag anyway, in Ready Player 2, apparently the most popular porn experience is a 50-person orgy where you can jump between any one of the 50 people and experience what they're feeling in this orgy, I guess. If you don't know what an orgy is, kids, don't go ask your parents.
Yeah, who doesn't? I mean, it's not okay, whatever. I mean, it's not like a super secret word or anything, right? So
yeah, I suppose, unlike Frindle, but anyway. Been trying to work a Frindle reference into this podcast for 7 years. No, that's not true.
Didn't we already reference it a couple weeks ago?
I don't know. Anyways, yeah, so they go to... Geez, we got off track. They got the contact lenses. I got us off track. That's my bad. So they go to meet...
For once.
They go meet Lois with the contact lenses, and they ask her to wear them and go to the... basically the Parliament building, because at some point all the kids stop and start pointing, and people realize they're all pointing towards London. That's a little bit later, but Gwen and Reese have figured that the most likely place where they're going to learn anything is where Frobisher is working, so they ask Lois to put the contacts on, and she refuses, but Gwen kind of forces her to take them. Anyway.
Right. Throughout this episode, they reference a place, I guess, called Thames House.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'll be perfectly honest, I neglected to look up what that is. I don't know, like, is it just another name for the Parliament, or is it like a specific room? Because they constructed that thing on the top floor of the roof or whatever, so I guess I can just look it up right now.
I got it open. It's basically the HQ of MI5.
So it's not even that, it's not even the Parliament building, like the iconic, Big Ben building.
But it's nearby.
Yeah, I guess that entire area of London is just like, the US, like, capital area with all the important buildings close by.
Wow, if you go to the Thames House page on Wikipedia, there's a popular culture section. The third series of the BBC television show series, Torchwood, used Thames House as the setting for the arrival of an alien species on Earth.
Yeah, cool.
So, yeah, now they go to get Clement, and they bring him back to Hub 2.0. Jack is still MIA, and while Jack is MIA, his daughter is calling his private number still, and he's still not picking up.
So she decides to borrow someone's phone off the street.
Yeah, but then she doesn't call Jack from that number. She calls, like, the police.
Yeah. That's how Johnson gets a trace on her, and they send troops to pick her up and her son as well, Jack's grandson.
Yeah, and we basically and that's when the pointing starts, is when they corner her, and Johnny, I think his name is Johnny, right?
Oh God, there's so many Johns and Jacks and
Johnny?
Johnsons and
The I don't remember the grandkid's name, but for some reason Johnny is in my head. The kid starts pointing, but we learn during this whole sequence that what is even the Jack's daughter's name?
Johnny is Ianto's sister's husband.
Right. Okay, that's why Johnny's in my head. He shows up in this episode too.
I can't find the kid on the cast list that I'm looking at right now.
It's Steven.
Okay.
Because Alice is the daughter. Right. So Alice's mom was someone else who worked at Torchwood with Jack, apparently until 1977.
Right, and she retired, I guess, because she died in, I think they say, like 2007 or something.
2006. Of heart disease. Natural causes.
Yeah,
Johnson says that's rare for Torchwood.
Yeah, I was going to say, they do mention that is rare for Torchwood, and I know, like, because a couple weeks ago we were kind of trying to deduce the average, like, tenure of people at Torchwood, and we were like, man, do they just, like, get killed off, or, you know...
Yeah, because they had mentioned they had like something like 100 people in 100 years, and we were like trying to work out the math on that whole thing about how many people, like the turnover rates.
Right. But they get taken in regardless.
Yeah, and all the kids are pointing to Tem's house again, like we mentioned. They're all pointing to Tem's house.
Right, and then the 456 arrive.
Yep.
In like a fiery blaze.
Frobisher is there to greet them. And they're basically like, take me to your leader. And he's like, haha, no.
Yeah, I didn't, pick up on this in this scene, but there's definitely like some, they're definitely conspiring with Frobisher, especially because he makes that request of them at the end of the scene, where he asks them to keep the events of 1965 a secret, which they comply with. On first, like, I don't want to say on first viewing because I only watched it once, yet I still picked up on this. But, like, it at first seemed in the scene that happened later that, they were totally in charge, but really they acquiesced to what Frobisher asked of them, so...
Yeah, there's somebody later has a line too about Frobisher being on the same side as the aliens too. Mm-hmm. I think it's Gwen or Ianto, because they realize that the aliens are lying about the answer to a question that we'll mention later, because it needs some context. That context being that Frobisher in this first meeting basically tells them that they can bring the leaders of the world to like that room, and that'll basically like be their ambassadorial common room, I guess. And then the Prime Minister reveals, I guess, to the world that the aliens have landed in London, and the only country to send someone to London to like complain about this or meet with the aliens is the US. And they just send like a high-ranking general instead of like, I don't know, the Secretary of State, who's like, this kind of seems like this would be their job.
I think they just wanted to have, because this, I forget which episode it was, but this guy had appeared before.
I guess.
It was in day 1 or day 2, I believe. I don't think it was prior to this season, but yeah.
I guess.
But, Prime Minister Green, he sort of just, I guess, plays this off in sort of a very apt way, I guess, for a politician. He's just like, well, whatever. I mean, I don't know. He gets away with it. He kind of just smooth talks his way out of it.
He basically says, like, the aliens landed here. Do you want us to go against the aliens? And they're like, I guess not.
Yeah, Unit also, shows up.
Yeah, Unit also complains that they weren't read in on the whole thing, and the Prime Minister's just like, well, what did you want us to do?
Yeah, it was General Aduya. That was his name.
Yeah, it's the same Unit General from day 1, I believe. So basically they come up with this plan to have a civil servant speak to them, because he's a non-elected public official who has no actual power.
Or so they think.
Yeah, yeah. Just so happens they elect to use the one guy who like has already had dealings with the 456, and who may or may not be like a double agent.
Yeah, I mean, I'll link this in the show notes, and I'm just shamelessly shilling it here. But one of our blog posts, because we have a blog now for some godforsaken reason, was about.
Don't act like you didn't want to make the blog.
No,
we were both very excited.
I was the one who suggested it, but it's just like also
true.
Making a blog in 2021 is like the most anachronistic thing you could possibly do. But yeah, one of the posts we have on there currently goes into like how John Frobisher is just like a middleman, and is just his role in the story is to like really dive into the sort of themes and concepts of like communication. And how it's so overwrought in government. But like, yeah, I guess this episode reveals that's totally off and totally wrong. Although I guess it is, I mean, in a way it's still, there's still a version of that is correct, because it's like, the government's pitfall is that think this guy who they only hired to be a middleman is much more, or something like that, so.
Yeah. Well, the government's folly will be its downfall, I think is what we're learning from through Torchwood Children of Earth.
Well, at this point, Jack actually gets in touch with Frobisher.
Yeah, because he steals Frobisher's wife's phone.
Yeah, it's a very interesting scene, considering we in the same week for Triple Play, our movie trilogy podcast, check that out, watched the Dark Knight trilogy, where Batman does a very similar thing to what Jack does here, where he kind of just slips in the scene, does something, and then just bails, like, before anyone even notices he's gone. Which Jack kind of does here when I guess they have their back door open, and he just walks in, grabs a phone, and bails.
Yeah, he grabs it off the countertop. And then Frobisher calls his wife because he's about to go into the room, so to speak, with 456 to talk to them. And he wants to tell his wife something. And then Jack picks up and he's like, yeah, well, if you don't want anything to happen to your wife, you're going to tell me what's going on here. And he's like, are they back? Is it the 456? And Frobisher's just like, yes, it is.
And in what another instance of like what I think is this sort of new hint at like Frobisher not being what he seemed in the first 2 days, Frobisher basically just like plays Jack, and he goes like, yeah, well, you're not going to do anything to them, so screw you. Jack is just like, damn it.
Damn it.
But Lois has also decided that she's going to go through with the plan. Reluctantly and hesitantly. Those are, I guess, the same thing. But she decides to go through with it. And this is like, I was surprised that her ploy to get in the room actually worked. Because what she does is she waits till Frobisher is doing something else. Then she goes to, God, what was her name? Spears, I think? Yeah, Bridget Spears. Yeah, and she goes, like, Frobisher, like, asked me to be part of this. And I guess just Spears doesn't run this by Frobisher, and Frobisher didn't ask her this. And she's just kind of there with them. So I guess he just allows that, and nobody really asks.
Yeah, because I think the way she tells Spears about this just so happens to double as being a double entendre. It happens to turn out to be true, because she's basically like, it was a private meeting. And then Spears looks at Frobisher and goes, ugh. And then she turns to Lois and goes, you're not the first. Everybody thinks they're the first, but you're not the first. Which to me kind of implied that Frobisher, I guess, just sleeps with the secretaries. And that this is like, Lois has accidentally stumbled upon using that as a good alibi to get into the room. And I guess, my question also was that I guess Frobisher just lets this happen.
Bridget doesn't like, I guess, run this by Frobisher to make sure it's actually what he said, nor does Frobisher even just question the fact that Lois accompanies them, even though he didn't ever ask her to. So it's just,
Right.
it comes across as kind of weird. But hey, maybe that's part of this whole thing where they're so in over their heads that they don't have, like, you know, the ability of micromanaging this one random person, you know?
Yeah. It also could just be a thing where, like, Frobisher assumed somebody else gave permission, somebody else assumed Frobisher gave permission, and nobody wants to actually ask.
There's a lot of different pitfalls of the, you know, bureaucratic stuff in this story. At least that's what I've been thinking this has all been. So, yeah, it's interesting. Yep. Anyway, they all go up to the room and have this public meeting. Not public, but the people are watching in, and now, since Lois has the contacts, Torchwood is also watching. But there's a problem for Torchwood because they can't. The way their software works is it reads people's lips and transcribes it as text. But Lois is standing behind Frobisher, so they can't see his mouth. So she has to.
Yeah.
This was a tense scene, but it ultimately amounted to what I think was, I guess, you know, nothing. I guess it was just tension for, like, the sake of it, which is okay, I guess. But, like, yeah, Lois then just walks, like, 90 degrees to like the other side of the room.
Yeah, she just walks around the side so that we can see Frobisher in profile view.
And it works.
And yeah, it works because there's the other thing too where Ianto's like, oh, the software doesn't work so well in profile, and then just it works, and Gwen's like,
it's a little garbled. That's the only thing, but, like, yeah, it works. This was almost like comparable, I guess, to, like, you know, the classic Doctor Who cliffhanger where, like, someone's about to get shot and, like, the first line of the next episode is just like, wait.
The other week, last week, or 2 weeks ago, I watched Misery, which is based on the Stephen King novel. And in it, there's a character who complains about how they always used to cheat to get out of cliffhangers and old serials she would go watch in the movies. And that just made me think of Doctor Who and the cliffhangers that are like, the Doctor's going to get shot, and the next episode she's like, he's out of bullets. Or like, the gun's out of, like, it jams. Like, oh, shoot. Or like a guy's about to, like, push the button to eject the Doctor from something, and he just doesn't. Like, oh, no.
If you ever read those old, like, pulp science fiction stories from like magazines in, like, the 30s and 40s and stuff, they're kind of like that, and they're just absolutely wild because, like, every other sentence is like a plot twist or a cliffhanger, and it's just like there's no relationship between those stories and, like, modern storytelling styles that people like. It's just like, just throw in as many as you can, just keep people reading. Doesn't matter if it makes sense. Nothing matters, in fact. It's just throw in as much weird stuff as you can, and the stories are only like 2 pages each.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you've only got 2 pages to tell the story, I guess you kind of have to just put all the plot twists in there real quick, you know?
Yeah.
So they're listening in on this meeting, and then they're struck by another problem, which is that the 456 representative, let's say, doesn't have a mouth. So they don't know what he's saying, he or she, what they're saying.
Right, and Lois, again, kind of tapping into the communication ideas behind this entire story, this entire season, starts writing in shorthand, which they can't interpret, but Ianto can read it for some reason, so he then acts as the interpreter for them. So there's multiple different levels of interpretation going on here. There's like they're on like the technical level with the lip reading software, and then Lois has to transcribe what the 456 are saying, and then Ianto has to translate that for the rest of the team.
Yeah, it's almost like a game of telephone going on between the
right?
456
And
and the
behind that,
Torchwood
there's
team.
also the coded message where someone from the prime minister, it might have been the prime minister himself, but someone passes on the message for Frobisher to ask the 456 why they chose England.
Yeah, I believe the American general tells them to ask that.
Right.
But what's interesting is that presumably Frobisher himself doesn't know who told him to ask that. Basically, he just knows that someone or one of the world leaders asked him to ask that.
Right. And he does, and the answer he gets is like there was no reason, it was just a random coincidence, which is obviously not true.
Yeah, Gwen immediately picks out that he's lying, and she says, "Why is the alien lying? Like what? Like what are we missing here? Like why is the alien lying?"
And that's
And someone says, "Well, Frobisher probably asked him to."
yeah,
Him or
right.
her, this alien.
Yeah, that's when they first kind of get the hint that Frobisher might be working with the 456.
We then see in the final moments of the episode, Clement is kind of freaking out because we see Jack approaching, and he's coming back. He's come back to take me, and Jack shows up, and Gwen's like, no, like Jack's trying to help us, right? And Jack's like, you fight against these things, right, Jack? And Jack's like, no, and they're like, wait, what? And he's like, yeah. So in 1965, I was one of the people who sent the kids off. I mean, I guess we still don't have all the information about this event, but I assume that we're going to get the details next week now that we know Jack knows all the details.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I didn't see this coming at all, but one of the things I wanted to talk about at the end, and now we are at the end, so I guess this is, this is the time, was like,
yeah,
like having Jack now appear in in Series 12 and in Revolution of the Daleks, like, I don't know, it kind of undermines, not fully, but it kind of, I guess, undermines this moment of like, if you were watching this live, you might think like, wow, they're actually going to make Jack a villain or something, But he's obviously still on good terms with the Doctor and Gwen and all that stuff, which we know from Revolution of the Daleks. So there's more to this, obviously. It's like, there's more to this story that we're going to learn.
Yeah. But I think that if you're looking at it from the perspective of something in the future can undermine that, the fact that Series 4 exists, I think, would even just serve to do that. Sure, I guess while you were watching it, you'd be like, oh, shoot, like, is Jack a bad guy? I can almost guarantee the explanation next time will just be something like Jack will be like, there was no other way to stop them. And then Gwen will yell at him like, well, we have to find another way this time because we're not giving up any kids this time. Even though Jack will be like, but it's the most pragmatic option, Gwen. Gwen's gonna be like, no, we're not doing that this time because look, I've cracked the Torchwood formula. So
yeah, I mean, it almost is probably gonna for sure tie back to, if not, I don't think they're going to like name drop it or anything, but that episode with the PJ Hammond episode where it was like those fairies or whatever who were taking children or something.
Oh, geez, what was the name of that episode?
Because we didn't actually explain it, but the 456 basically want 10% of the world's children, and we also learn like a minute later that in 1965 they took 12 children. Which is obviously way less than 10%, but
presumably we'll find out why they took less kids back then versus today. Presumably there's an explanation for that is yet to be uncovered, shall we say? Right.
And something else that's yet to be uncovered is what the 456 actually look like, because they needed in day 2, we learned they needed that special atmosphere to breathe that was toxic to humans. And in this episode, they are fully, engulfed by that sort of fog or the cloud that it creates. So you don't really see them, but they have these like, what you do see of them, they kind of have these like tendrils and they spew like slime or whatever.
Something that will probably be toxic if it touched humans. We see in the preview for next week, which remarkably gives away very little, that somebody's going to go into the box with them in some sort of Arrival-esque scene that I guess Keon's not going to get that reference since he still hasn't seen Arrival, as far as I'm aware.
No, no. Arrival is the one with the like the
With Amy Adams.
yeah,
The circles, yeah, the
yeah.
circular language.
Yeah, I always get that one mixed up with that other movie that came out at the same time. I forget what it was. Oh, it was Annihilation, the one with like that alien pillar of light.
Oh, yeah.
That, like I
think those were 2 different years, but yeah, sure, okay. I see how you could get those confused.
yeah, I've seen Annihilation. It really sucked, but yeah, a lot of people have told me to watch Arrival. I think I've mentioned that before, but I just never have. So,
And I'm one of them. I wanted to talk about 2 things with regards to this episode, actually. The first one is less consequential than the second, so I'll do that one first. And that's just that, like, I kind of have a problem with, I guess, this story as it's developing now, because they keep telling us that John Frobisher is a good man, which is, like, first off, telegraphing the fact that he's going to do something truly evil later on. But also the fact that, like, I don't know, Russell T has been so good at like showing us things that it's weird that like he's resorted to just telling us that John Frobisher is a good man, because so many people in the story so far have told us, Gwen has told us, the Prime Minister has told us, like Jack even insinuated that John Frobisher is a good man, and they basically say it exactly like that, but nothing we've seen him do so far like backs that up. We learn in this episode that he's probably sleeping with his secretaries and cheating on his wife, with whom he has 2 kids. He's like, hasn't been shown to be a really good husband. And there were just so many ways that they could have, and maybe they'll still do this, that they could have shown us that he's a good guy. Maybe he's a really good husband. He takes good care of his kids or something. Or like maybe he's a really good, like, civil servant, and he does a lot for the poor or something, you know what I'm saying? Because they just keep telling us he's a good person, like they're setting up for it to be a big shock when he does something evil, but everything we've seen him do is like not bad, but it's not good. It just kind of makes him out to be just like, yeah, he's just a guy. Like, he's not as good as everybody's saying he is. But
yeah, I mean, well, that's the thing, is like everyone thinks he's this stand-up guy, but like the more we learn about him, the more we realize that that's like not actually true. You can even I lost it. I forgot what I was going to say just right now in the last like 2 seconds, but there was something in like day 1 or something. I was going to reference something in day 1 that like kind of hints that, but then like, yeah, all the stuff in this episode is also a big hint towards like this guy has more going on than what everyone else thinks about him.
Also, ordering the kill order. Not a good thing.
I mean, yeah, I mean the episodes or the characters in these 3 episodes so far have definitely like told us like, yeah, this guy's a good guy. Like this, why is this guy doing this? Like we trust this guy, but like everything we've seen as an audience has indicated otherwise. So, and even that in itself is like he has this ability, whether it's intentional or not, to get other people to trust him, even though he may not be fully trustworthy, So.
Mm-hmm. The other thing I wanted to talk about was Keon was talking about communication and how the theme of communication comes up in this season. And I was thinking it was interesting how at the beginning of this season, the audience was put in this position where we thought we knew more than Torchwood. We knew who ordered the kill order. We knew that Jack was, like, they were going to try kill Jack. We knew where Jack was before Gwen and Neonto figured it out. Like, we knew who had captured him. We knew that they were building this box for the alien ambassador. We knew that the Prime Minister was setting John Frobisher up to fail. And this episode, in the 3rd episode, we get that, like, completely flipped on its head. Like, everyone in Torchwood knows everything the audience did and more, because now this 3rd episode does this whole paradigm shift, which is such an overplayed term, but I think it applies, because now they know that there's an alien box. They know Frobisher tried to kill Jack. They know that Jack was taken by Johnson. And now it's revealed that Jack actually knows what went on in 1965, and we as the audience, even though we thought we knew more than Torchwood, it's revealed that we know less. And I think that's really cool how this episode took what we thought we knew as the audience and then just flipped it completely on its head and by the end of the episode.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's just what I wanted to mention, that I think that's interesting. And I think it's going to play into the final 2 episodes, because we're officially halfway through this now. It'll play into the final 2 episodes somehow. But we'll see.
Definitely. I mean, there's like, miscommunication or translation or whatever is like, or like the manipulation of information for certain ends is like, it's come up so much that like it all has to be leading up to something related to that. Like, I'd be surprised if it wasn't.
Yeah.
Maybe it'll just be like classic Who, where every time we got our hopes up, it was just like, it was just for nothing.
But you know what I like about us is our unending spirit, and how we continued to keep getting our hopes up, even though we continued to have them smashed at every single turn. We kept getting our hopes up every single time. And we still do.
Yeah, we just keep trudging along, getting beaten down at every turn. Well, I'm really excited to see where this all goes. I think this has been a gripping season so far. Gosh. Yeah, I'm excited to watch the next 2 episodes.
Yeah, me too. It's gonna be a wild ride. Let's should we do our segments?
Yeah, I guess we should. Nah, I'm gonna skip them this week.
Nah.
I didn't look anyone up this week because I don't think there were actually any new people.
Yeah, I didn't either, because, well, for the same reason, actually. I didn't think there was anyone new who, I guess, merited looking up. Or warranted, I should say.
Yeah.
No one who had an overwhelming influence on the story, anyway.
Yep.
Ignore Ianto. We did that really well this week.
Yeah. Yeah. His role was sort of smaller this week. He did have a few scenes. He had a scene with Jack where they're trying to get Reese out so they can be alone or whatever, and then Reese...
That's when he was obsessed with the beans.
Do you think Reese was doing that intentionally to like get back at Jack for just all the reasons why he was mad at Jack? I thought he might have known what they were talking about and just been like, nah, like, I'm going to cook or whatever,
I didn't actually think about that at the time. I thought he was just being obtuse, but I like that interpretation more. So.
And then there's another scene where Clement calls Ianto a queer, and then Ianto gets mad. I don't know. Is that like... I don't know if that's a slur or if I should have even said that, but yeah.
I think it's a slur now in the 21st century, because Ianto says something like it's not 1965 anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
He also, I mean, there's also when he buys everybody's clothes, he has an oblique reference to the fact that his father was a total throwback to that random thing we learned recently. Gwen commits some sins this week.
Yes, she does.
Namely wrath and greed. Stealing money would fall under greed. Pretty much that's like the definition, really.
Yeah.
That's just acting on your greed, actually.
Yeah, I mean, even if you have nothing to your name, you should obviously just starve.
Well, Jesus had nothing to his name, and he got a whole book written about him, so...
Yeah, so no excuses, Gwen.
Then again, I guess Jesus could turn water into wine and, come back from the dead, but,
Yeah, I forgot he can just turn stuff into food. What the hell was he, on about? Okay, whatever.
She doesn't really commit any of the other sins, I think.
No. How distraught should Jack be? I don't know, considering like the fact that he has now revealed that he knows way more than he ever let on, and was perhaps a mastermind behind the original event.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it really depends how much he cares about what Clement McDonald thinks about him.
Yeah, yeah, I
You know,
guess.
because we know Gwen will just move past whatever atrocities he committed in the past, like she's done multiple times before.
Yeah, Reese,
Ianto too.
Yanto for
So
sure. Reese, may call him out on all of this, but like, what is he gonna do about it?
yeah, yeah, exactly. And also the preview for next week. The only real spoken line that I remember is someone going like, "A man who can live forever and can't die has nothing to be afraid of," which is true. How did the government screw over Torchwood this week? Well, stealing away Jack's daughter, which, by the way, didn't get resolved by the end of the episode, and Jack is still unaware of that fact, actually.
I thought Frobisher
And
told him
presumably,
on the phone.
did he?
I,
I mean, he might have. I might have
I
missed
think
it.
he did.
You're probably
I
right.
think he did.
You're probably right, and I probably just missed it.
Yeah, I can't remember 100%, but I'm pretty sure. I think he did.
Yeah, according to the TARDIS wiki, you're right. Frobisher tells Jack they have taken his daughter and grandson into custody and will kill them if he blows the lid on this conspiracy, basically.
But yeah, I mean, in what way did the government like not screw over Torchwood this week? Like,
Yeah, I guess that's right. Yeah, well, those are those segments
Yeah,
out of the way.
I mean, I guess that's it then. A short episode, I guess, for us, but we still have emails and comments to read. But yeah, that's it from me, pretty much.
Yeah, that's it from me. So I'll go into these emails
Right.
then. So I've got 2 emails from Sergeant Drainer to read, one for day 2 and one for day 3. I had assumed there'd be one for day 1 in here somewhere, but I can't find it anywhere in my inbox. So Sergeant Drainer, if you're listening and you did send one about day 1, just send it again, please, and thank you. Okay, day 2. Greetings, guys. Been a while. Sorry, been busy. You know how it is. So you are now in the midst of Torchwood Season 3, the miniseries known as Children of Earth, almost indisputably the best season of Torchwood, a gripping tale that is legitimately one of the best things I've seen on television. Day 2 continues to build on the suspense surrounding the 456. It's mostly an episode for Torchwood to pick up the pieces following the devastation at the end of the previous day. Peter Capaldi's John Frobisher continues to be a real standout performance. He's certainly on the wrong side of this thing, yet somehow remains a sympathetic character. I love the scene where he thanks the Prime Minister for giving them responsibility and the PM bluntly tells him he's only putting him on the front line. It's interesting how this is a Torchwood story, but could really have been written as a story of government intrigue without Torchwood being a part of it. At least so far, they very much feel like they're at the edges of the table with Frobisher at the center of it. Nice corpse effect on the partially constituted Jack Harkness inside the body bag. Good to see Andy again. On to day 3, Sergeant Drainer Station 7 the door. And then the day 3 email, greetings my friends, the glorious day 3 where the alien spew finally hits the proverbial fan. It's kind of extraordinary to realize that the aliens don't even physically show up until the series is nearly half over, but boy howdy isn't the payoff great. I think the presentation of the 456 is near perfect in terms of producing fear, horror, and mystery. We see just enough of them to be horrified and our imaginations do the rest. More great work by Peter Capaldi as the civil servant who increasingly wishes he were anywhere else other than dealing with this situation. His reaction when they first appear in the tank is terrific and terrified. And his fear is what makes us fear. And his fear is what makes us fear is what really sells the 456 as a threat. I can't remember if it was day 2 or 3 when Deckard describes the room with the tank as an ambassador suite, a throne room, and a slaughterhouse. You really feel like it could be any and all of those things. Great build-up of Jack Harkness as, quote, the man, unquote, Clem remembers the man who gave 12 children to the 456, and what a perfect end to this day as the 456 asks Frobisher for a gift, 10% of the children of the Earth. Followed by Jack, totally deadpan, answering that no, he doesn't always stop aliens, and that yes, I gave them the kids. Gwen asks why, and Jack tilts his head a little and replies in an almost offhand casual way as a gift. As if this is the most ordinary thing in the world. I wonder if the scene and that response is what spawned the old segment of yours, things that should bother Jack, but for some reason just don't. Because even though Jack may act like a regular dude most of the time, he really, really isn't. His immortality, his agelessness means that everyone he has ever known, ever seen, ultimately dies, rots, and turns into dust, turns into history. I think in a sense, Jack sees everyone else as already dead, already history. I don't think he's able to empathize with other people in a normal way anymore because his own life is so different, so alien compared to the lives that other people lead. There are no personal stakes for Jack, only for other people. Consequently, I think Jack has become a bit of a sociopath. I think this is probably Bannerman's best work. Looking forward to your podcast. Sergeant Trano, Station 7, The Door.
Yeah, there's a scene about that we totally glossed over. It's the same scene where Reese is making the beans and Ianto he basically runs it by Jack. He's like, so I'm going to die one day and you're just going to move on, huh? And Jack is like, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this is something that Doctor Who tackled with the character of Ashildr/Me.
In a more inept way.
You know, the longer she lived. Well, sure, yeah, but also more directly, because I don't think that Torchwood has ever been. Even Doctor Who was never actually cared about Jack's immortality as a thematic element. It only used it as a plot element, which I think aren't always separate, but I think in this case are. Because the character of Ashildr was very specifically, in my opinion, analyzing the what happens when someone lives too long and watches everyone they love die. Jack, they never really address that or bring it up very often, except for in day 1 when Alice mentions that her mom hated Jack because she grew old and he didn't, and how she is now at that point because she's old and he's not.
There's some spoilers that I know for the rest of the season that I think could dive more into that, though. So I think they are going to explore it a little more heavily.
I suspect they'll explore it a lot in season 4, for which I know one spoiler.
Yeah, maybe.
Also, Doctor Who never concerned itself with, even in Revolution of the Daleks when Jack came back, that was never even brought up, and in hindsight is kind of a missed opportunity, because there is the potential for a really strong scene where the Doctor's like, I don't know who I am anymore. It turns out I've lived longer than I thought I lived. A lot of my life is a lie. And Jack could have been like, well, I've lived for hundreds of years and I started to forget a lot of the things. I don't remember who I was when I started this life, my original life, and I'm a totally different person, and that's okay. We're still friends. You still love me. I still save the universe, etc. But that didn't happen.
Yeah, they barely even mentioned Jack's immortality. I think it was just more of a passing quip.
Yeah, when he talks about getting shot by the Dalek. Also, Jack not being like everybody else. Also, the show also barely ever talks about this either, but remember, he's from the 51st century. So he's from a completely different time period.
Yeah, I mean, when you put it in that perspective, Torchwood and Doctor Who both have never really, examined Jack too heavily. Which is...
Yeah, he's always just kind of been an interesting character and nothing really more.
But yeah, I do. I think the 4, 5, 6, to switch gears here, I guess, are their portrayal. I mean, there's something Lovecraftian, I guess, all about their portrayal. They're sort of, because they're obscured by this poison fog or whatever. I don't know. There's just something your mind goes crazy. All right, what could be lurking? In the smoke or the gas or whatever that is in the chamber.
It's the the mind is the best generator of horror, basically. What you don't see sometimes can be more powerful than what you do, because the imagination will fill in the blanks.
Yeah.
I know I said that in a really weird way that made it impossible to parse. If that's okay.
No. It's, I'm trying to think if this is more, or if there's any connection between this and the sublime or the uncanny or anything like that. But I don't think so. So maybe it might be more sublime than it is uncanny. So I don't know. But yeah, there is something uncanny about how Jack is just I already know everything and was part of this, because he he was close to home the entire time, and you know, you kind of learn more about him. But we can go into that next week when we actually know.
Yeah, what did he do? Or why did they give them the kids? Like, what do they want the kids for? That's the biggest question in my mind.
My guess at this point, maybe we should even be doing predictions for these, because it is sort of a story with good cliffhangers and stuff. But like, in my mind, it's going to be something about like they need the DNA of like human children or something to save their species or something like that. So I don't know. That's where my mind went.
No, I bet it's just my mind went to slavery. They just want slave labor.
They come to Earth. All right, we need 12 kids to, build monuments to us or whatever.
Yeah, we need 12 kids to build a portal to Earth so we can come back to take more kids.
I mean, I also think that there's going to be something like time paradoxy about this because of the whole 2 time periods thing. Like, yeah. I don't know.
Maybe.
I don't know.
Maybe.
We'll see.
Maybe. Anyway, yeah, that's it on the email front. Thanks for emailing us, Sergeant Trainer. Good to hear from you again.
Yeah. We also have some comments on Facebook. So this one is on our episode on day 1. And it's from Alex. So Alex says, prepare to have your heart ripped out and stamped on repeatedly. In the book where Benjamin Cook discusses Russell T. Davies' writing process, he discusses this season with all the glee of a supervillain about to unleash killer bees.
Great.
Yeah. I know I know the big spoiler season. I think you do too, but I'm going to refrain from saying what it is in case you don't. Yeah, I'm stealing myself, I guess.
Stealing yourself.
With 2 E, the one with 2 E's, the verb steal.
Stealing EA.
Yeah, like what Gwen suggested they do.
This is your main character. This is your savior. I don't know. I don't remember the exact quote from The Dark Knight. This is who you've chosen to save you.
It's the hero we got, but not the one we needed or deserved. But yeah, I mean, I'm ready, I guess, since we both already spoiled it. Or spoiled much. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess.
Anyway, we've watched, obviously, and put out our episode on Revolution of the Daleks, so despite how unfitting it might be to also put these here, these are some, we had some comments for that as well. So we got one from Boz, rather. So he says, did anyone else think the 4 knocks the Doctor heard in her cell were from the Master? Is he in that prison too? Also, I will make a prediction now. At the close of Series 13, Yaz will leave the Doctor and join Captain Jack in a new series of Torchwood. So I responded that would be awesome, but I'm also kind of expecting something more tragic.
That would be interesting, because I think the rights to Torchwood still reside with Russell T., who has said that the Torchwood audio, because they did a Torchwood audio season 5, and I think Russell T. has said like that is canonically what he would have done for season 5 if he had the opportunity to, and is like canonically season 5 of Torchwood.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, maybe they could just go for more Torchwood adventures, with Jack and Yaz or something.
Yeah, they could like reestablish Torchwood, since I guess I'm assuming Torchwood is disbanded. That's kind of the vibe I got from Revolution of the Daleks, and I guess I don't know if by the end of Series 4 if it's still disbanded, because at the moment they're just criminals on the run.
I got the impression that if it's not disbanded, Gwen has at least retired from Torchwood. That's the impression I got from Revolution.
Yeah,
I don't know.
That makes sense.
I don't know if that's true, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we'll have to see. John Badman's getting quite old. I didn't realize he had gray hair now.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he's fully gray.
It's kind of hard to have a series about an unaging immortal man when your actor ages.
Yeah, just going from day 2 to Revolution, which is the order we watch them in. He is visibly older in Revolution. They dyed his hair, but he's still, you can tell,
Yeah.
Yeah.
A reminder of the unending march of time.
Well, that's all the comments we had. There were more comments in the chain, but we don't have to get into this sort of discussion, reading out discussions on the podcast. But yeah.
Yeah, well, thanks to everybody who reached out with feedback and information. Really appreciate it.
Okay.
And on that note, if anybody would like to reach out, you can email us at thedoctor@decoratevegetable.com. Questions, comments, concerns, angry rants, love letters, your thoughts on Torchwood Season 3. You can find us on YouTube at Decorative Vegetable, us on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and anywhere you find the podcast at Trust Your Doctor, a Doctor Who podcast. Be sure to leave a rating if you like the show.
Check us out on Facebook, Trust Your Doctor. Like us on Facebook. Also check us out on Twitter at TYD Podcast, and follow us on Twitter. And next time we're going to be watching day 4. But until then, the end.